We're ready to start, and we're welcoming Madhuri, Yechuri, and Bridget McCurlin, and they're going to talk about hands-on exercise on open source. Welcome.
Hello everybody, welcome to the session on getting started with open source. A couple of housekeeping items. We would like to get as much hands-on experience for you all, so highly encourage doing the hands-on lab part of the session. And if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to ask so that you get the most out of the session. So a little bit about the presenters. My name is Madhuri and I am an engineer at a small startup in container space. I've worked in the industry for 16 years and I've mostly dabbled in systems engineering work. So I really enjoy systems and distributed systems, and I discovered open source last year as part of my new job, and I absolutely love it. And this is Bridget McCurlin, and she is going to run the hands-on workshop.
So if I may ask, what startup are you from, or is it in stealth mode?
No, it's a cluster HQ, it's in container space.
And just a little bit about me. So I recently worked with Cluster HQ with Madhuri. And before that, I worked for Sun Computer Entertainment doing toolchain work for PlayStation consoles. So about this time last year, I had no open source experience. So this is a topic that's quite close to my heart. It's something I really wanted to get involved in, and now that I've been doing it as well, it's been really fun. So I'd like to encourage everyone else to get involved.
Yep. We'll share the slide deck, and the entire contents of this workshop will be shared online. So you should hear from Rupa about it.
Okay,
yep.
Thank you.
So the first question is, why open source? I worked in enterprise from 2000 until last year, and mainly in core enterprise at Oracle and VMware. And when I worked at Oracle for 12 years, I was really trying to learn languages and domains outside of database server, because that's all that I knew. But every door that I knocked of a director or a vice president that I asked to be interviewed for something that was other than database server, everybody would say no, because they would be like, all you worked in is just database server, so why should I consider you for something outside of database server? So I decided to leave Oracle, and every company I submitted my resume to that was not in database server technologies, again, I had the same answer. You only worked in database server, so why should we interview you for something in networking space or storage space? So I found it extremely hard to learn something new. Open source is a really good platform for you to learn new languages and new domains without someone opening the door for you. You don't need to ask for permission. You don't need to request someone or beg someone to interview you for a position. You just find projects that interest you in a new language or in a new domain that you want to learn and start contributing. So today's workshop is, we hope that this will get you started in how to go about with the workflow. And also free yourself from employer-employee domain affinity. So I spent 6 months trying to interview for non-database companies when I was ready to leave Oracle, and nobody would give me a chance to interview. So this would be, this is another reason why you would want to start contributing to open source. Open source communities are quite different from enterprise workspaces. So open source communities give you the feeling of being in a classroom with classmates, and you're collaborating on a project for your midterm or your end term. So there is a lot more supportive community feeling in open source as opposed to enterprise, for example. Enterprise, you're working with your coworkers or teammates, and it's just very small subset of people. At the max, maybe your team is 10 people large, and you're never working with more than 10 people on one project. Whereas open source, there are hundreds, and some projects there are thousands of people who all are working on the same idea. So it's very exciting to learn from and collaborate with such a huge community. So that's something that really got me excited when I switched from enterprise to open source. Also, having open source presence and open source contributions helps with your future employment. So if nowadays more and more, when I interviewed out of Oracle, I just had this like crazy, filled with sweat whiteboard solutions when like 3 people are looking at me and judging every minute of my work. But when I was interviewing outside of VMware, when I was moving out of VMware, everyone asked me, what is your GitHub ID? What are your work samples? So more and more employers are asking for open source presence. Also, if you just share with them your GitHub ID or your open source work, they can gauge better how you actually work in actual supportive environments, which is more of a signal for how you would perform in real life versus, and you might even avoid whiteboard coding, which doesn't really present your best self to future employer.
So are you saying that it has totally replaced whiteboard coding, or it's just a complement? You have to do both, right?
No, so if you submit, from my experience when I was interviewing outside of VMware, if I didn't have GitHub ID, so they would ask for whiteboard, but if you had GitHub ID, you have a sample of your work in open source, you don't need to. So in my current employer, for example, if you have open source, we kind of like, that gives you a much deeper understanding of how the person actually works or produces work. So you will not be asked to do whiteboard.
You spend a lot of time in actually working for projects which are usually you can't open source or you can't do that. And finding a separate time to work on projects which are specifically for open source, something I find it very tough to do.
Yes.
And I agree with you, GitHub has been a really good way to show your work sample. So suppose I did some project which on something related to my project, which my employers, I'm pretty sure they won't allow you to, put it on GitHub. So how do I, what was your experience in putting those kind of projects? But you would have learned something to the open source.
Yes, 2 points. The first thing is, if your goal is to present a work sample to future employer, the quickest path to that would be select open source project in the same domain as your work. We will go through the workflow later on, Bridget and I, and you can pick bite-sized tasks, and that will you won't have a ramp-up time, so you will be able to start contributing right away. So if that is your goal, as opposed to I want to learn a new language or I want to get into a new domain. So you can very quickly start contributing if it is in the same domain as your day work. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Popular hosting platforms, if you are short of time, go with GitHub. That is the most popular hosting platform currently, and you'd be surprised to know how many of your day-to-day tools that you use are hosted on open source. So let's get started and get our hands dirty, handing it over to Bridget to actually get you started with your first open source contribution.
Okay, thanks.
Let's take this. If you could get on the GitHub link that is posted above, that would be great while we get started.
Okay, thanks, Madhuri. So for everyone to get a little bit of a feel of how to contribute to open source, I've set up just a really simple repository. So can everybody access this? So if you want to participate, can everyone access this okay? Yeah. Great. So what have I got?
If you have issues, please raise your hand and I can walk over.
Yeah.
You only did 3 hours ago.
Sorry?
You only put it in 3 hours ago.
Oh yeah, I had it hosted on my own account, and I've moved it over to the CodeChicks one. So it's,
doesn't everybody like this like an hour before the presentation?
Yeah. Okay, so for the prerequisites for this, so what I'd like everyone to have is a GitHub account and Git installed on your local machine. So can I just get like a show of hands of how many people either have Git and have a GitHub account? If not, then we can kind of go through this this process together. So So you have a GitHub. Okay. So if you need to sign up, once you go to this repository or like onto this page, there should be like a link at the top, sort of right, to say either sign in or sign up. So if you want to go through that, I'm just trying to wonder, should we like carry on or
Yes. Does anybody need help with the GitHub
yeah.
access? Let's move on.
Okay. So what I'm going to work through today is a typical workflow for contributing to projects on GitHub, and generally this is a standard workflow that gets used across a lot of projects. And what we're going to do is, so the first step to like create or to contributing back to a project is to fork a repository. So once you've signed or once you have access to GitHub, the first step is to fork the repository. So what I'm going to do is, so this is a repository that's hosted by the CodeChicks open source group on GitHub. So I'm going to fork this repository, and what this will do is essentially take an entire copy of this repository and make it available on my account. And the reason that you have to take it onto your own account is that generally you won't have permission to like contribute directly to someone's project. So if you copy it onto yours, you've got permission to, because it's on your account, you can experiment, make changes, and know that you're not affecting what's upstream. So if I fork this repository, I'm going to bring this over onto my own personal account. So now we can see that on my account, I've got open source intro, and it also has a link to the original repository. So this is the first step. Where do we go from here? So if you want to make changes to this, you need to bring this repository onto your own machine so that you can actually actively do some development on it. And then to get that onto your own machine, we're going to use the git clone command. Is everyone comfortable with using Git? I don't want to make like assumptions on people's knowledge of this. But I've listed all the commands that are needed to go through these steps on this repository, so you should be able to just copy and paste and fill in the right bits as needed. So I'm going to copy this onto my local machine. So if I go to my home directory, if I do git clone, I've already copied that. Can everyone see this okay? Should I make it a little bit bigger? It's okay? Yeah, great. Sorry, I just realized I have. Okay, so now that I've copied this repository onto my local machine, I'm now in a position where I can start actively making changes to it. So if I go into, so this is the directory where I have all the code that was on that repository. So you can see I've got the license, the README, and so what I'd like to do for this part is I'm going to show you the type of change I'd like everyone to make. Okay, so within this directory, or sorry, within this project, I have just a little small JSON file, which if everyone is able to add their name to, at the end of this workshop, you should be able to see like your name and your GitHub profile picture on this page. So the first step in making a change once you've cloned it onto your own machine is to create a branch for your changes. And the reason why we create a branch is so that it kind of isolates your changes, and then it means that you can like work on multiple different changes at any one time. So I'm going to make a branch. Oops. And I don't have a username to add to this now. Yeah, so I'm going to say add Madhuri to attendees. Okay, so now what I can do is, so the next stage is to like make a change to one of the files that's in this repository. So I'm going to edit the attendees.json file. So I'd already added Madhuri earlier, so I'm just going to make a change to her name. So maybe I'll just remove her surname, just so that I've got a change to make. So this is a file that is now, I've made a change. It's now different from what I originally copied locally. And the way that you can check your changes is you can use the git status command. So if I do git status, it will tell me that I've modified one file. And I can double check what, sorry?
Did you change what you have or did you add?
Oh, I changed it, but because the file is, because if you're going to be adding something to that file, and because it already exists, anything that you add to it will be counted as a modification. Does that make sense? So for this, so I can show you like the diff of what I've just done is that I've just modified this one line.
Right. But because the file actually shows you and Bridget and Madhuri.
Yeah, so you
should
need
we?
to add.
Yeah. So if you yeah. So if you add your own name to that.
Right.
So we're adding our own in addition to the two that are listed.
Yeah, so if you just add like a new sort of JSON blob that's like indicated here, if you can add something along that. So once you've made a change, if you want to see what that change is, you can use the command git diff. And that will show you, so anything that you've removed will be marked with red and with like a minus to say you've taken something away, and the plus indicates this is something you've added. So hopefully, if you've added your username, you should see a little blob of green that says your name and your username.
You might want to clarify that username is GitHub username.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, yeah, so just a note from Madhuri. If you include, so in the username section, if you add your GitHub username, yeah, so just like I've indicated there. Is everyone okay if I move on to like the next stage of? Should I, yeah, okay. So once you're happy with your changes, the next stage is to commit them. So committing is essentially like taking like a snapshot of the changes that you've made so far, and it kind of saves that state. So if I'm going to do, so I'm going to add the file, and adding the file just says to Git, this is the file that I am about to commit. So sometimes you can change multiple files and maybe you only want to save part of it. So doing git add lets you specify which changes you'd like to commit. So I'm going to do, and when you do a commit, you specify a message so that whenever you look back through the history, you can see what was the change and why you made it. So I'm going to say, modify Madhuri's name. So I've just added a commit to this repository. And now if I look at the log, you can see that this is the most recent commit that I made. So here's my name and my email address, and that is the message that I've made. Okay, has everybody been able to see that change so far? Great, thank you. Okay, so now we're ready to push these changes to the remote to your version of the remote repository. So I'm going to git push. Oh, sorry. Oh, I will. Oh, I can't make this scroll up a bit further. So this is the command that I use, git push, and then the set upstream origin just says that it will create this branch on the remote repository and copy all those changes over when pushing those. Okay. So once you've pushed your changes, when you go back to the GitHub page, GitHub will notify you or give you like a display on the page to say you've just pushed a change, and this is the branch that was created, and now it gives you the option to compare the change against the original version and also to allow you to create a pull request. So if you click on that button, you should see it, a page which says you're about to open a pull request, and you'll be able to like view the differences between what's originally there and what you've just changed. So this is the change that I've made.
Could you show where do you
Oh yeah, sure.
compare?
So if you go to the homepage for the repository,
Could you show the terminal how you did the?
Oh.
So when I did a commit, it said reset author. So I didn't know that.
oh, sorry, I've just heard like a comment there. Sorry, so you wanted the,
Yeah, when you actually try to push it,
Mm-hmm.
and how did you put the origin?
oh yes, so you do git push dash setup. Oh, the branch name, so that's just whatever you called your branch name locally. So whenever you did the checkout and you gave a branch name, you just put in that same branch name again.
Does it have any special quote or whatever?
No, you can just the name of it directly, yeah. Sorry, I'll take a look.
So I add the checkout, this
Yeah.
name, and then I did that. Origin. Like that.
Oh, so it's add flamingo to attendees, so it's,
Oh, the whole thing.
yeah, so the whole
Oh,
branch name.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, does anyone else have any questions? If I gloss over anything, please, like, let me know. So once you've pushed your changes, like I said, you can, GitHub will give you a little button so you can compare your changes and create a pull request. Oh. So, sorry, can I just ask, what was the error? Thank you, Madhuri. Sorry, there was another question? Ah, okay. So I'm gonna come down. I'll like navigate around the room. Oh. Oops, thank you. Okay. So you copied the full repository name. So if you go back to.
This is.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So if we go to, so did you fork the repository? So that was like the. So if you go to.
I created just now. I signed up.
Oh, you just signed up. Yeah. So if you go to CodeChicks open source. And this open source intro, if you fork this repository,
do that. Okay.
yeah, so now you should be able to do the git clone of all of that. So if you just copy that link directly.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
I have another question.
Yeah, sure.
We all pushed these changes. I pushed it, but
Yeah.
there weren't any. It didn't complain about merge conflicts. Is it because I forked it?
Yes. Yeah. So so did you get merge conflicts?
No, I
Sorry.
didn't.
Oh no. Generally, that's only the point whenever you're going to merge your changes back in.
So push doesn't merge it.
No. Push just makes that available on the remote repository.
Okay. And but is it because I had forked it? This is.
Yeah. So if you
forked it, then it would have. If I would have done a git pull, then probably or clone, then it would have complained about merge conflicts if others had already.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so doing a git clone will just will take like a copy of the repository as it exists locally and bring it onto your machine, and then you should only really get merge conflicts if you've made changes which conflict with what were already there. So since you're like copying it for the first time, you shouldn't get any merge conflicts. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you. Okay. Does anyone have any other questions? No? So once you're ready to make a pull request, when you GitHub will give you the option of saying where your change exists that you want to merge in, and then where you want to merge that change to. So here you can see that I'm copying from my account and add Madhuri to attendees branch, and I'd like to merge that into the CodeChicks open source repository, and I want to merge that into master. So you can specify where you'd like your changes to go. And for making a pull request, you need to specify a title for this, and also you can leave a comment to describe your changes. And generally, whenever you're contributing to like an external project for the first time, it's always good to describe your change in terms of why you're making it, and just explain any decisions that you've had to make as a result of your change. But since this is quite a simple repository, if you just like put in a title for it, then we can get those pull requests created. Okay, so at this point I'm going to create a pull request. So now you can see that I want to merge one commit into open source master from this branch. Okay. So I already have permission to access this open source repository, so I'm going to look at someone else's pull request that's been created. So Lipsa has created a pull request to say that she wants to add her change to the attendees. So now we can see the name and the username. Sorry, I'm just going to look through some of the others. Yeah, great. Okay, so if I realize I'm kind of running out of time, so I'm just going to like have a look at this. Okay, so if I say, generally you'll have a code review from the project maintainer at this point, and they'll like suggest any comments that you need to make to your change, or whether they'll say that it looks good. So I'm going to say, this change looks good, merging. So I'm going to comment on that, and I'm going to merge the pull request. Okay, so now if I go back to the open source intro, so I've merged one pull request. Now you can see that there's a new commit in there. So if we go to Samina's user page, you can see that there was now 2 contributions on this day of opening a pull request and contributing to this project. So over the course of today, any other pull requests that get opened, I'll like merge them in, so then we can kind of see everyone who attended and who made the pull requests. Okay. Oops. So that's it. So once the pull request has been merged, you're now officially a contributor to a project. So yeah, congratulations, you've just like made your first open source contributions. So I'm going to hand back over to Madhuri because we've got a few other points that we wanted to cover, but I'll be around after this if anyone has any other questions, because I realize it's quite a lot to get through in a short space of time. So yeah, I'll be available if you've got any other questions. Thank you. Sorry, do you want to take this?
So now that most of you have made your first contribution, how do you find projects to contribute to? So if you go to GitHub/explore, you will have, GitHub will guide you through what are the kind of projects that you might be interested in, and it will allow you to pick and choose a project. So you can, that provides some kind of guidance. And most projects have issues that are open on the project, where you can say that I want to pick when I want to get started, I want to pick an issue that is a very trivial, maybe a documentation fix or a small one-line bug fix to get me started with the project, rather than pick like a huge feature implementation. So get started with small trivial bug fixes, and issues have labels associated with them, so you can sort on the basis of label that the issue is associated with. So pick something that's really small, tiny, and trivial, and you can work up from there. Best practices. So most of open source work gets done remote. Usually you're collaborating with tens, hundreds, if not thousands of people across the globe. You will not have face-to-face interaction, so you need to be extra polite to make up for lack of face-to-face interaction. So it's not like it's your coworker that you see every day, so you kind of have some rapport established already. So try to be a little extra polite when you are communicating on projects. Contribute to code reviews as much as you get them. So it's a community helping each other. So this is something I myself struggle with. I'm always lagging behind on contributing to code reviews. I do not review as many issues, pull requests as I get reviewed. So make sure you're giving back to the community as much as you're taking from it. And thank your reviewers. You get a lot of really good review comments, and you get a lot of, you learn a lot technically and grow a lot technically. So make sure that you thank people that have spent their spare time giving you constructive criticism, and also finish what you started. Open source ecosystem is so wide, and there is so many like shiny objects around that, oh, this project looks interesting, let me grab a trivial bug here. Oh, that project looks interesting, let me grab a trivial bug there. So you might end up having a lot of branches that are just hanging there. So it's better to just go serially rather than like get attracted or distracted by too many opportunities out there. Here are a couple of links. Bridget and I will share the slide deck as well as with the link to the repo that she ran through. And Bridget can be reached on Twitter. I can be reached on Gmail. Acknowledgements. Thanks a lot to Bridget for putting together the amazing workshop. Code Chicks for letting us share our experiences, and you for attending and listening to us.
Thank you.
Thanks.